punch lists. We're going to talk about punch lists today, which is, I think, almost every builder's least favorite thing to deal with. And, honestly, some of that's self-inflicted sometimes. And I think that's always a big source of conflict between a builder and a client.
There's always something, even when you plan, you have everything detailed, there's something that comes up. And all we can do is just try to set their expectation early on. It still gets a little bit emotional sometimes with the homeowners and just how you kind of respond to that.
Everyone's heard nightmare stories about building or remodeling a house. Do you have one of your own? As a consultant, I get hired when construction projects fall apart to help pick up the pieces. And while that's great for my business, it doesn't have to be like that. Whether you're a homeowner, a builder, or anyone else in the construction industry, wouldn't it be great if your projects went smoothly from the very start of planning all the way to move-in? I'm Curtis Lawson, and I've been a custom home builder and remodeler for over 20 years. I started the Your Project Shepherd podcast to talk about the right way to build or remodel houses. Here we focus on the 4 key components of any successful project, which we like to demonstrate using the simple drawing of a house. The foundation is proper planning. The left wall is your team, the right wall is communication, and the roof is execution. Tune in weekly for my conversations with industry-leading guests to learn about processes, products, and the science behind building. Hey friends, welcome to a new episode of the Your Project Shepherd podcast. I'm your host, Curtis Lawson, and I am joined today by my friend Bo Butler with Butler Brothers Construction. Bo is here to talk with me today about punch lists, which is something we touched on in an episode in the first season, a year and a half or so ago. I wanted to have a more in-depth discussion about some great ways to kind of prevent the never-ending punch list and the best way to manage a punch list. And we've kind of shifted the focus of this show over the last year to be homeowner focused to also being builder focused as well, industry focused. So I wanted to kind of talk about this from the perspective of people in the business and some best practices for managing punch lists from the builder side, but also kind of talk about the homeowner side as well. So Bo, thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure.
Tell us a little bit about your background, your experience, and what Butler Brothers does.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate being on your podcast. Butler Brothers was created about 20 years ago, a little before that. My brother and I were just, we both have architectural backgrounds, and we just wanted to do something together. We both loved the building industry. We wanted to use our architectural talents that way. So that's kind of how Butler Brothers, all started up, and we got in initially to a lot of development stuff. We wanted to do development, but in the process, found ourselves just doing most of the construction as well. So that's how it began about 20 years ago.
Great. And Bo and I are on the board together at the GHBA Custom Builders Council, which is where I kind of got to know him. And we've had several of those guys from that group on here, and it's always a great conversation talking to other guys here from Houston who are doing things the right way, who are involved in leadership and helping further the industry. So I appreciate all your efforts at the GHBA and all that you've done there too. You've actually been in leadership previously there, and you were kind of dragged back into it, right?
Right. I've always felt like, being involved, in a professional organization, it's just really important for our industry. For one, just it represents yourself well with your clients, and it gives back a little bit to the community, and it advocates for what we do. And if we don't advocate for the industry that we're in, by joining organizations like that and volunteering for time, that helps increase the organization's ability to properly advocate for us, then we're not really doing a good job for ourselves. So, it's very rewarding also to give back to the industry as well.
I agree. And I love promoting the educational aspect, which is a lot of what we do as well. We have a monthly luncheon for people who are listening who don't know, but most of the HBAs have something similar. But we have a monthly luncheon where we bring in guests and talk about different topics that are relevant to the industry. And the education portion of it is super important, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I view a punch list as, hey, we get to the end of the project and the builder says, we're done. Let's do a walkthrough before we turn over this house to the client. And that's their opportunity to identify areas that they don't think conform to the contract or the standards or whatever. And we work through that list before we hand over the house to the homeowner. So you think that's a good definition?
I think that's really important. And I think that one of the things that get conflated or get confused in the process is homeowners believe, and rightly so in some cases, that punch list is whatever they think is within the standards that they expect expect it. And so it's just really important that we maintain a standard, and the standard is going to be based on the warranty that we're providing with them. So obviously, as a builder, we want to do our best quality work. I mean, if something is below the quality, the expectation, then we ought to just fix it. And it's really best to obviously have those expectations defined before. And it's hard to define those unless you have something to show them of what the expectation should be.
Yeah, we've discussed this before on the podcast, but here in Texas, at least if you're using the Texas Association of Builders contract and warranty documents, there's a performance guidelines section in that warranty document that outlines this is how this should perform. You know, things like concrete might have cracks because it's concrete and it gets cracks, but a crack in excess of a certain amount is a warranty item or a punch list item. There's performance standards for different categories, and it's important to have something to hold it up against to say, you know what, I'm sorry that you don't like it, but this meets the standard. That might seem harsh, and as builders, you know, we should again strive to give our clients the best product, the best finish, but at the end of the day, there has to be something that you're weighing it against. It can't just be your arbitrary idea of what's right and wrong and the homeowner's arbitrary idea of right and wrong. There has to be something at the end of the day, if by some chance it goes to court, God forbid, that we're holding that up against, right? I also strongly believe in when we're writing our contracts, or we're giving our clients some detailed specifications on what we're selling them, right? And so like drywall and paint, that's like one of the things that seems to always be a big conversation at punch list time. And so, you know, they have to understand that, you know, your contract said that we're giving you a level 4 or level 5 or level 3 drywall finish, and that's defined by the National Drywall Association, whatever, right? And that imperfections may be present, but if it's not viewable, you know, for more than a certain distance, it's not considered something that we have to fix. When we give a contract, it's got to have some level of expectation of, we can't just say paint the walls. We can't just say hang the drywall. It's got to say drywall is going to be installed and floated to a level X finish. And then that way we can go back and say, hey, I'm sorry that you don't like that imperfection, but we performed what we said we were going to perform. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, it is a hard expectation because obviously, you know, homeowners probably not going to know what a level 3 to 4, whatever. And if you said, look, it's a level 4 finish, there may be a little bit of, you know, disagreement between the actual finish of it. Typically, when I get into a situation like that, it's just easier generally just to go back over the wall again, as opposed to going through a lot of conflict. But I always do preface that because you don't want to redo the whole house. They can get very particular. The other thing is, and you don't really know the complete finish of a house until everything is cleaned and all the lights are on properly, and then you can really evaluate the house. And just evaluating it yourself, knowing what your expectations should be for the house, gets in front of the homeowner's expectations, so you can tell them what they should expect.
Right. I guess I said that because I'm always thinking absolute worst case scenario, if something were to go to court or arbitration or whatever, if you can say, hey, I sold you per our contract a level 3 or level 4 drywall finish. This is what we performed. We obviously hope it never gets there. But in my mind, when I'm writing a scope of work or a contract, that's why I'm including those details because, you know, I mean, I like to have those conversations too and say, hey, your drywall budget that I have in this job is X, and that is for this type of finish, and this is what a level 4, this is what a level 5 finish is, and just have that conversation before we ever sign the contract. But again, the reason I like to write it, it's like long-term.
Yeah. No,
protection
totally.
Against future legal issues.
Yeah, no, totally. And, you know, I don't know if I even specifically write that. I usually just have walked everyone through a prior home that we've done. And so that's just like the easiest way for the expectation to be met without having to write it because, you know, I do write a lot of specifications when we use a contract and we talk about what the specification is. It's just, it still gets a little bit emotional sometimes with the homeowners, and all we can do is just try to set their expectation early on in the process.
Yeah. You know, one thing that I think is a good practice, and this is advice for builders, but it's also advice for people on the homeowner side to listen to as well. I think the builder should be kind of allowed, maybe the wrong term, but I think the builder should go through and do kind of their own internal punch list long before the client ever tries to do their punch list, right? Or their walkthrough and create the punch list, because I know people are sometimes itching to get in there and do it because they want to, you're at the end of the project. You've waited a year and a half, 2 years to move into this house, and they're so ready to move in. They want to do that punch list. And so we've had to tell people on quite a few occasions, I know you're antsy. Let's give it a few weeks. Let us work through our process. Let us get these items addressed, and then you can walk through and we'll do our your final punch list. So I like to give my trades the opportunity to come in and do things, because as you know, when you get down to the end of a project, the electrician's going to rub his bags against something, or somebody's going to ding the wall, or they're carrying something into the house, and we need to be able to address those items before the homeowner starts to think it's a real issue.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the whole time when we're getting through the trim stage, I'm constantly going through a house, walking it just to see if there's anything. If there is, I go ahead and blue tape it when my trim guys are in there. And what I mean by trim is the mechanical, electrical, plumbing trim out. Yeah. I'm just constantly going through it and trying to foresee every possible issue if it has to be redone, because it sure is a pain in the neck to do it later. You've got the bigger mess later on. I hate the sheetrock mess and all the things that come up with the sheetrock, which always seems to be the biggest issue is the sheetrock. Maybe there's something behind the sheetrock that's affecting it you just didn't see. And you do try to plan for every detail, but sometimes you get a sconce up there that doesn't quite cover where the box is. You have to change it out. So there's some repairs that have to be redone, or a cabinet outlet that's not quite in the right place. You have to move it. So there's always something. Even when you plan, you have everything detailed, there's always going to be there's something that comes up, and it's just how you kind of respond to that. Something.
Yeah. And so if we kind of fix a bunch of those things internally, kind of as we're approaching the end of the project, and then again, maybe before we do the official walkthrough with the homeowner, let's just get a bunch of this stuff knocked out. One thing that you have to, as a builder, you have to have a good relationship with your painter, especially when it comes to the end, because you can wear out your painter with, hey, come back and do another round. I mean, I've had several painters be like, dude, I've done 3 rounds of touch-ups already, no more, So I think it's good practice as a builder to have a line item in your budget that's just for extra paint touch-ups. And if you don't use that budget, great. Or just have an arrangement with your painter that says, your paint bid includes 3 rounds of coming back here and fixing stuff, right?
Yeah.
But have some level of expectation with your trades, because it's not the painter's fault that somebody else rubbed his tool bag against the counter, against the cabinet or the wall, right? So you have to have some level of agreement on what they're going to do for you versus what you're going to have to pay for.
Yeah. It's a give and take between all the trades. I mean, obviously, if you're trying to constantly manage every trade coming in and out of the house and back charging them from everything, it's going to be hard to accomplish anything. You're never getting any favors from them.
Yep.
So it's a little bit of trade, and sometimes you just got to eat a little bit sometimes just to get through the process. And I'll tell my painter, I'll give him some flexibility when he's not done the best job. You get a little bit of flexibility to work around it. And I also tell him there's certain areas, just don't do a second coat until after we've completely done it. The stairwells, just don't do it until after the homeowner's moved in, and we'll just tell the homeowner we're going to paint it after they mess it up. Yeah. Make the stairwell, and when you put in mirrors and stuff, you're always banging the walls. And
the movers are going to scrape the wall too.
Yeah. Especially
in the stairwell.
And so I always just tell the painter, don't worry about every aspect of it. Let's just get what we need to, and then anything in the open areas, let's just do 1 coat, and we'll do our final coat after the fact. So it seemed to work out fine for me.
Yeah, I agree. My painter requested a few years ago. He said, you know what? I don't even want to come back here and do the last coat of paint until every other trade is out of this house. I want to be the last guy. That way there's no playing the blame game on who did what. But I did hear about, in the last couple of years, I actually added a line item to my drywall budget and my paint budget that just says, touch-ups, into project touch-ups. Yeah. And I've got a couple $1,000s on each line item just for paying those guys to come back and do little stuff in case it arises. And if it doesn't show up, then great, I just made an extra $4,000.
Exactly. I totally understand that, and I hate to even get into having to budget for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that could kind of fall under your contingency budget, but I like to just have a little extra padding in case it comes up. But okay, so drywall and paint, I think, are some of the biggest issues that most builders have. What are some other really common punch list items that you experience on a regular basis?
It seems like you've always gone through the hardware and you've put all the hardware on the doors and all the doors work perfectly, and then all of a sudden the door doesn't latch, and so you have to make an adjustment to the hardware or to the door. It's binding or it's ghosting or something like that. That's one of the things that seems like it will come up. One or two doors in a house that has that problem. I think that to me, it's primarily just that nail pop that showed up after the fact. You put the hardware on the wall, a piece of accessory or something like that, toilet paper holder or something like towel, and you get a pop or something like that, or it happens after the fact, or those are the biggest things primarily. Because generally, we've gone through everything else pretty good, and the painters has done a pretty good job. But occasionally you'll have a scratch on a countertop or a sink maybe, or
floor,
something like that. Floor, exactly. One of the things I try to do to try to prevent some of my punch line items is I use pre-engineered wood stained floors. And they just hold up better. I hate just doing the old plastic coated wood floors. People say, what a solid wood floor. And I've gotten away from all that. I try to reduce my punch list items really by some of the products we try to choose to use other than just planing.
I think tile for me, we generally have some punch list related to tile, and some of this honestly is a function of how close the project manager is keeping an eye on the tile guy and how good your tile guy is, right? But it seems like on every house I've always got one or two pieces of tile somewhere where something's not exactly the way we like, or maybe there's some grout that's a little out of whack in some place. But it seems like almost every punch list we have a little tile issue to correct, which drives me crazy because it's hard to remove one piece of tile and replace it.
Yeah, and that would be really difficult. We have gone to an allowance in the tile for labor and materials, and we just use a really good tile setter, and he's probably more expensive than some would typically use, but we just found that we've reduced a lot of the headaches, because that's the one area that can really be detrimental to how the finish happens. And then that's the amount of time and effort. And it's not that we've never had those problems, but we've reduced them.
Yeah. I would venture to say that probably, you and I and other builders who are doing good quality work probably have a smaller punch list than a lot of other people that I experience as a consultant, because I've helped generate punch lists for other people's jobs on numerous occasions. And so I see the stuff that people try to get away with, unfortunately. A lot of what I see is stuff it's not really, there is some fit and finish stuff, but a lot of it is really stuff that was just done kind of not to spec, or something installed in the wrong place or the wrong product or whatever. And we get to the end of a job and something's on a punch list that really should have been just installed totally different 9 months ago, right? Whether it's a receptacle in a totally wrong location, or a light that's not centered over a sink, or stuff like that, right? And so I think, obviously the old saying is, ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, something like that. Having good trades, is key, but also good project management. The builder, the owner, whether it's the owner or the project manager, however your company structure is, but having somebody on site and doing walkthroughs, checklists at various stages to make sure, is that in the right place before I move on to the next phase, right? That's huge.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, on top of the fact that it's just management, because we ultimately have all the responsibility as a builder, but making sure that outlet, that sconce, is put in the right place, and making sure that you have the specification before you got into the electrical rough-in. Yes. Because a lot of the homeowners don't want to specify something, like, we're not putting the fixture in until 3 months before the end of the project. But I need to know how high it is, how tall it is, how wide it is. Is it going to fit mirror between the two sconces?
Yeah. What kind of boxes are required to mount it to?
Yeah. I mean, what's the height? I mean, how's it going to switch? Is it a three-way switch? Is it, all these other things that sometimes homeowners just don't recognize that as an issue. And I think that I heard probably 10 years ago of a builder who said, I'm not going to build a house or start a house for anybody unless I have every 100% of all selections complete. That's the deal. And he kind of built it as if it was a spec, I guess, in some respects. But as we all know as builders, building a spec house is just easier because the expectation is we've already selected everything.
Yeah.
And so I think that we have to kind of treat, and I think it ultimately makes the organization for the homeowner a lot easier. Sometimes they do get a little bit confused because I don't remember what I picked 9 months ago, or whatever it might have been. But, with good documentation, I think that's generally what we've tried to do, and just try to re-explain it. And if they have to reselect something, then, we try to work around those items. But, having everything, planning, it's like what they say about location. It's planning. Good set of architectural plans, a good review of them, having the homeowner understanding what those architectural plans mean. And as my background as an architect, I think that's one of the things that I try to bring to the job site is just that the planning idea, understanding what the plans are going to say and how the room lays out, and trying to share that vision with the homeowner, with the buyer of the home, so they can get the idea of what the expectation is clearly.
Yeah, two things you said there that I love is, or that I want to comment on rather. One is kind of having everything selected in advance. That's the ideal world, is we kind of know everything before we start. But I think a lot of builders would be very well served by creating selection deadlines and saying it may not be realistic for everything to be picked in advance, but I need to know these decisions by this phase, and it's got to be final by this phase. So by the end of framing, I need to know all my plumbing, all my electrical, things like that. And sometimes that can even affect framing. But generally speaking, as long as you don't totally change direction on what type of fixture it is, if you have those decisions before framing's finished, you're in good shape before you start your MEP rough-ins, right? But in a very complex custom home, especially modern homes, that stuff can really affect your framing.
Wall mount.
Affect your joist layouts. It can affect where your truss layouts are for plumbing drains. I mean, there's a lot of things that can be affected, right?
Oh, totally. I mean, just a wall mounted fixture. Someone said, you just can't put in the middle of a stud. So you got studs, they might want a shampoo niche, or they want some kind of recess in the wall. Well, it just might not fit there based on what we have. I always tell the homeowners when they want to put a recess in, I won't put in an exterior wall. And they're like, why not? I'm like, this is the amount of insulation. So if I'm going to reduce the amount of insulation, it's going to affect the performance of the home. So I just don't want to do that. So we'll further the wall out if you want, reduce the space, but we're not going to reduce the performance of the home. So once again, that probably leads them to a little bit of a punch item thing that we try to deal with. And so maybe getting in front of some of these items that we know that ultimately come back to haunt us. And that probably reduces some of our punch lists through our experience and having those planned items. Our contract basically says in the process that we need to have these selections done at these different stages of the architectural planning process. So we do that, and I think that other builders, if they work with designers or architects, if they can have that conversation with them to make sure they get these selections made, instead of putting them off to a more convenient time later on, which is never going to be more convenient, and just trying to maintain that the planning side of it, because once you're building, you shouldn't be planning anymore. There's no more planning.
Yeah,
it's just a process of scheduling, and that's what really affects the schedule too. If you're trying to plan in the middle of a project, because you can't schedule around that plan, and we have enough conflicts as it is with subcontractors, weathers, material delays, delays, that you might have. Personal, something might come up. There's always something.
Hurricanes, no power for a week.
Yeah, and that's a really hard thing for most of my homeowners understand that, but it is hard for them to understand that it's not a week that was delayed. It might be 2 or 3. For one, you don't know where the subcontractor is on other projects. You don't know how they're affected differently.
Their personal situation that may affect their work.
Yeah. I mean, like when we had that windstorm, we had, a granite guy who had an additional week of loss of power. And so he couldn't even start the project. And, we can't get countertops in. You can't finish plumbing. You can't do backsplashes. There's so many other variables that come in. You can't trim out the outlets possibly that are in the island if it's a wrapped island. So there's so many other variables that you have to deal with. And then that comes down to punch ultimately, because you can't get those delays are affecting your ability for timing, your schedule. And, even when we plan the best schedule possible, it just seems like it never really works out. And so trying to get ahead of those punch list items is what my goal is always, to try to just walk the house often.
Yeah. So I was going to comment on something you said a minute ago also about having a good set of plans. So good architectural plans, but also good if there's an interior designer an outside designer who did all the design work, having a good set of drawings or specifications from them is just as important, because a lot of designers will come in and kind of do their own set of elevations, and they want very specific placement on things. And depending on what kind of tile it is, they may have a very specific tile layout where they want their grout joints falling. And having as much detail early in the process and then following that is going to give you the best results. I've actually seen or been a part of some conflicts as a consultant where the homeowner's not happy with the final result and the way it looks, and the builder's like, "You didn't give me any information. I just did what I always do," right? And the homeowner's like, "Why would you put that grout joint there?" And the homeowner's like, or the builder's like, "This is what I always do." "Well, that's not what I wanted." "Well, you didn't tell me that," right? And so, it usually starts with they didn't have a detailed set of architectural plans. And so they were just guessing as to how something was going to come together. Now, as you know, you can get a super bare bones set of plans from a guy who's charging $1.50 a square foot for plans, or you can get a very, very detailed set of plans. And it's not just a difference in cost. There's a whole bunch of extra pages and a lot of extra detail in that more expensive set of drawings. And so when a builder is working with a bare bones set of plans, that leaves a lot to the imagination. And he's going to do, especially if it's a guy who's not experienced, he's going to let his subs do what they want to do, right? And so the homeowner doesn't know what they're going to get. So a little extra time and money spent up front doing more planning, better drawings should yield a better result.
Yeah, it's kind of that pound of flesh you're going to have to pay ultimately in one way or the other. Just pay for it up front, plan for it, do a good job. What we've also decided that we will not lay any tile without tile drawings. It has to be detailed. We want exactly what you're going to put in. We don't want to do it on the job site, because then you have a disagreement. It's a signed document. Everyone's reviewed it, approved it, and that seemed to have resolved some of the conflicts we've had maybe in the past, other than the fact that we had a house to show them this is exactly what you're going to get. So if you have a disagreement, you're going to come back and we're going to show you the house that we already built, and then say this is what we agreed to do. So they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. It's worth it always.
Yeah, and I think a lot of items that again wind up on a punch list to me aren't really punch list items per se. They're more the homeowner doesn't like the way something was done, and so now they're calling it a punch list item. And at that point, it's just a conflict.
Yeah, no, and I think you had said something earlier. I've done some projects where I've come in after other builders, and a lot of it is not punch list items. They just didn't do an appropriate job to begin with. I mean, as you had mentioned, it didn't meet basic specifications. It wouldn't have passed the city because maybe they didn't put insulation in an area that should have passed. How did that even get passed through inspections? So, and if that's ever the case, that's just a deficiency in the construction process. It's not a punch list. And I think that's one thing that it gets confused a little bit, with that homeowner orientation.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the punch list process and the handover process goes all the way back to the beginning, and just setting good expectations from the beginning. Setting expectations and then having a good contract in place and having good definitions it prevents a lot of conflict at the end of the project, because you can always look back and say, "Do you remember that discussion we had at the beginning? This is what I was talking about. Here's the documents that we based all this on." Hopefully it doesn't come to that, but again, I'm always kind of thinking worst case scenario, I guess, because I see and I'm involved in trying to help resolve so many conflicts. It's kind of moved me into a position to where I'm planning everything for worst case, right? So the more you can set expectation, the more you can define things before you ever get started, the more protection there is on both sides, whether you're a homeowner or a builder. The more you can put in writing, the safer you are.
Yeah, no, totally fair. And I think that also, just being honest, not ever concealing an issue,
right?
Because it is a sausage making process, and homeowners just sometimes don't really want to relate to that. They just want everything clean and how it's supposed to be when it's finished, and try to explain that to them, as well as, honesty, patience, just having an expectation of your own, of how you're going to, present what you want to present as your skills as a builder.
Yeah.
And so I think that if we can just, get through some of that, sometimes we don't want to accept sometimes the responsibility. We just want to say, it's probably okay. Now, if we can just get over that and really sometimes just accept that this is not really the quality that we want to give to our client, and we go ahead and just accept it and get it done, as opposed to putting it off to the end to see if maybe the homeowner can like it or not.
Yeah. Actually, something just popped in my head that I think 2 attorneys have told me now. And one is, I won't say his name, but he does a lot of our GHBA legal presentations at our luncheons. He actually helps write the contracts. But, and one of the attorneys that I've had as a guest, they would actually say the less you put in writing and the less you define, the safer you are. They're like, don't say that you're going to do that. I think that kind of depends on your capability to execute what you say. So if you're not capable of giving that level of product, then don't say that, right? Because they're going to hold you to it. I look at it like, I feel confident in my company's abilities that if I say we're going to do X, we are capable of doing X. But don't overpromise. Don't say, yes, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and then especially your subcontractors, because at the end of the day, you're only as good as your worst subcontractor. But don't say that I can do ABC if your subs aren't capable of actually doing that, because then you're putting yourself in a position where you're having to say, well, I did my best.
It's kind of that analogy, just under promise and overperform. Just try to keep the expectations pretty basic, and then when you overperform, it looks great, especially if you can get it done before the expected deadline, which hardly ever happens, but it does feel good when you actually get it done.
One attorney told me, don't even take your clients to your past projects or to your current projects, because you don't want them to say, well, you did it that way over there. Why didn't you do that on my house? I think it's a little bit overkill, and that's the attorney's kind of CYA. But I understand that, right? Because again, if your most expensive painter did that job, and then you've got another painter on this job to meet that budget, if you're working that way, right? You don't want them to try to hold you to that on this when that wasn't in your budget, right? I've had that advice from attorneys too.
Yeah, no, totally understand that. And I think that when you're going through the budgeting process, you just tell them what the difference between the qualities of what you're getting. And so maybe in that planning process, once again, when you're trying to provide them with the estimate, that it's for their budget, and they're meeting their budget with these items that you're trying to work with them on.
I know you want the Ferrari, but you can only afford the Lexus. Sorry. I mean, there's different levels of subcontractors. There's different levels of materials that you can purchase, and so they have to understand what it is they're purchasing. So I always tell people, just understand that you're buying the Toyota or the Lexus and not the Mercedes or Ferrari. So one thing that we've started doing, people manage the punch list different ways. People manage the information in different ways. So you may not do this the same as me, but about 6 years ago, I think we switched to using a digital project management system. And actually, I just switched companies. I was with one of the big software companies for a long time, and I just switched to a new company. But a lot of these software systems have to-do lists. They've got warranty lists, all those kinds of things built into the system. And so one of the big advantages that I think that has is when it comes time for punch list or warranty, we can create all these to-dos in our software instead of working off a paper list or a Excel spreadsheet or however we used to do it. Usually it was a yellow notepad until about 6 years ago. Now we use our digital system to track all these issues, and even having the ability to go in there and assign that task to my plumber, to my painter within the software is a big advantage. It's just a way to keep everything on track, right? Do you guys do anything like that right now, or are you still operating off the notepad, or how are you doing it?
Well, I think our sophistication is we usually go to our phones and we do a project punch list that we can share with multiple people in our company.
Yeah, that's great.
So it's handy. We can email it out. But, as we were talking earlier in planning, I think that our punch lists are fairly short. And when we don't have many of the there's some obvious issues that we can go through, but hopefully we're not getting into any MEP things at all.
Yeah.
That's not, as you were talking earlier, that's not a punch list item. That was just something that wasn't done properly to begin with. So we've tried to already accomplish that. So really the punch list is a homeowner's orientation walk. And so if there's something that's not oriented right for them, or something that's just not to the quality that we would expect, would be primarily a finish issue. Yeah. And occasionally there'll be a piece of hardware left off, or something that was delayed, something that's not complete, something that just might not be ready for installation would possibly be on the punch list. But we try to keep it down to maybe a one page.
Hopefully there's not multiple pages of a punch list. It's just a few items. Yeah, I agree. We try to keep ours very short. And again, that's trying to do a lot of that stuff internally rather than having to get it on some kind of client punch list, because sometimes when you've got a big long list, they're kind of on heightened alert. They're like, oh my God, we found all this stuff. What else can we find now?
And I think the house just isn't ready at that point in time. It's not ready for them to really move into it. It is hard to tell a homeowner, or you've set an expectation that it's going to be ready, and it's just not. We did have to have some hard conversations about, hey, you're just not going to be able to move in. We need to move it for another month. I'm sorry, we're just not ready. It's just not ready, because your expectation is just we can't get it to that stage, and we don't want you moving in. It's just not ready. We have to delay your move, have another month in your rental. Those are hard conversations to have, but in the long run, it's just so worth it, because, the liabilities are reduced.
Yeah, it's always tough when, especially if they're in a rental, or if their house is closing on their property's closing, they've got to move in, they got to be somewhere, and it's a hard conversation sometimes. And for better or for worse, we've had to make concessions and say, okay, we're going to let you move in, but here's the expectation of we can do a punch list now, but once you move into this house, all these scratches, dings, damage, whatever you might find, that's on you, right?
Yeah, I think that also
to a certain extent.
From the builders, we're always a little bit afraid of, okay, they moved in, they've accepted the punch list. If they damage something else, are we going to have to pay for that? Or, they're going to withhold money if we don't let them move in, or how this whole thing happens. And, we, as builders, we have to be in control over that, because we have to get paid for everything if they're going to move in. Make sure that's done, and the punch list is secondary to that. That's just something that's part of the warranty. Sometimes it's hard to explain to them that is not actually part of it's warranty. It falls in the warranty that we have a full 1 year to facilitate. So
yeah, we have that conversation a lot, and say, in our contract, it says once you move in, the house is substantially complete, and anything from that point on is warranty. And it doesn't mean we're not going to fix it. It just means that it's not going to be done, right now. It means we have some time to work through these issues. Let's touch on warranty just a little bit. I think you and I are probably both doing this similarly with the TAB contract. There's a 1 year warranty on finishes. We tell our clients, when we get close to that 1 year mark, like 10 months out, do a walk through the house, make a list of items that you see, and let us come through, and do one hard sweep of the house before the warranty expires. If you see a little paint item 3 months in, and another one 6 months in, another one 10 months in, I'm not going to send the painter 3 times to do a little touch up. So let's get a kind of a conglomeration of finish issues, and let's hit them all at once. Do you do something similar?
Yeah, you're spot on. I would tell them, if I come out once, I'm done. I've met my expectation of the warranty. So if you have me 3 months into the homeowner, if something really bad happened, I want to fix it, because I don't want you to live with that for another 7 months or whatever it might be. But wait until the very last month. I'll be happy to do it after, if it's the 12th month, give me that time. If even it's the 13th month, I'm not going to badger you about it. But I want to do it once, because I'm not going to come back again. It seems to have worked generally 90% of the time. There's always going to be the exception.
At some point, especially kind of beyond that 1 year point, there's certain items that are homeowner maintenance issues that if you don't do X, if you don't maintain caulking on window, if you don't do certain things, if you don't follow your responsibilities, it's not my responsibility to fix the resulting damage. In that, warranty document, it says there's a list of homeowners' responsibilities, right? You got to follow all your manufacturer's recommendations. You've got to inspect things, make sure your grading is right, make sure your window caulking's intact. So there's certain things that if the homeowner doesn't follow what they're supposed to do, then the builder can't be held responsible for fixing what they didn't maintain.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's hard to have that conversation sometimes with some of the buyers, owners of the house at that point in time. They are like, well, yeah, but you didn't, I'm like, yeah, but the warranty says this, took the responsibility once you own the house and you didn't maintain it. Now you want me to come back 5 years after because you got a leak? And, there's some materials that we've tried to stay away from, we're moving away from in construction, just because we know that that's inevitably is going to come back. And that's just like, once again, between punch list and warranty, we try to avoid products that we think that are ultimately going to cause either a warranty issue or a punch issue.
Yeah. And I tell people, hey, I'm happy. I mean, even 5 years down the road, I'm happy to help you resolve these issues. Just understand it's not going to be on my dime, right? If you've got a leak, if you got a crack in something, I'll help you. I'll get my trades out there. We'll fix it. We'll invoice you for it, give you an estimate for it and do the work. And generally, people are reasonable and we'll go with that. And then you occasionally get the person who's not reasonable, but that a majority of our clients, when especially on maintenance items, you explain that to them. You say, hey, I'm not going to leave you high and dry. I'm here to help you. It's just going to cost a few $100 or a couple $1,000 or whatever. They're okay with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And sometimes I kind of bite the bullet a little bit and take a little bit more responsibility because I just don't want it to sometimes get into another situation that would not be favorable for either party. Sometimes I'll just deal with it the best I can. But and it's all circumstantial, and so much of it has to do with the homeowner and how they treat you as the builder. Sometimes a little honey is, it seems to do a little bit better in terms of trying to get the result that you're trying to get.
Yeah, or if that customer's referred me to other jobs or whatever, I'm probably going to go out there and just take care of it for them, So, all right, to kind of wrap this up, is there any advice that you would give homeowners as they approach the end of a project and kind of enter the punch list phase on how to handle that or expectations?
I was thinking that, obviously early on when you interview your builder, having those expectations and knowing what the builder does sets that tone early on. So for any homeowner, they should really interview and understand if that builder's the right builder for them, whether it has to do with budget or performance, style, quality, or design elements, or just specific.
How they interact with people.
Yeah, exactly. And then, being patient, knowing that it's going to get done. It's a lifelong home. The home's going to be there long after we're finished with the construction. Construction is a small portion of the total time they're going to be in that house. So try to be patient. And then once again, plan it. Plan it with a designer, architect, or somebody who can really go through all the details. So you can understand the home. You can get what you want when you're done. It'll be budgeted better. It'll meet your expectations when you're done. And the schedule will probably be dealt with better as well once it's well planned. So I don't think you ever skimp on planning.
How about on the builder side? Any advice for builders who may be newer or less experienced, or who just want to do this better?
From a builder standpoint, obviously it's important for them to have it all planned out. Interviewing your client, make sure that you are a good fit for that client, because sometimes you might just want a job enough that you're willing to reduce your fee or to, reduce your budgets, knowing that it's not going to ultimately benefit. And ultimately, I tell my subcontractors, they have to be successful. They have to make money. They have to perform some expectations, because if they can't perform and make money on my jobs, then they're not going to come back and do the warranty things and do the things that need to be done properly. So it's important that, from a builder standpoint, a young builder or anybody who's building, that their subs, you're not going to hurt them too much with trying to reduce their price to the point where they're actually not going to be able to produce a product that you need them to do.
Yeah. And also, don't hire the cheapest sub to do the work to begin with, because that guy may not be capable of executing what you've sold the client, or that guy may be working so cheap that if you need him to come back and fix something, he may not be around to come back and fix it.
Yeah, well, that's going to be the case for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I still have a few subs who are kind of one-man operations, but I've had long relationships with them, right? I've tried to shift more to a little bit larger subs that have, some enough going on to where they're not only relying on me for income, or if something happens on one job, it's not going to bankrupt them, right? It's, they're going to keep going. They can absorb a little bit of struggle if they need to. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that some of the key ones are obviously the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, roofing contractors, people that are doing things that are really substantial to the viability of the home, the structural integrity. Those things are just not worth skipping anything on. And I agree with you in terms of trying to find somebody that has some ability to absorb additional work if they need to do it.
All right. Well, I want to kind of wrap it up there. I think the key takeaways are just to, again, planning. So it all starts at the very beginning. One of the things that we preach on the podcast is having a good team, having good planning and good communication. And so from the very beginning, again, it's having that good set of plans, both from architect, designer, having the right subs to execute the work, and then having a good process during construction to make sure that you're verifying things are in the right place, they're framed properly, they're roughed in properly, and then having subcontractors that can execute the work. So I think if you have those strategies in place, it's going to greatly reduce your punch list and potential conflict at the end of the project. Would you agree?
Absolutely. You couldn't have summed that up better.
So, well, thanks for coming on today, Bo. It's always good to see you, and great to have you and your words of advice today.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Your Project Shepherd podcast. I hope to see you next time. Take care.